Welcome to today's live stream. The fun part of being live. So what we're going to discuss today, the 30 questions to a successful data analytics project. Okay. I'm getting a lot of yeses. I'm trying to watch all these things at once, all these windows at once. So what we want to talk about today is focusing on a good process and structure and how that can change chaos into order in your environment. What we're hoping is that this becomes a series, and in each installation we'll dig deeper into the topic, covering all the aspects of a data analytics project: architecture, tools, management, all of that. All right, here we go. Let's try this again, shall we? Too many monitors, too many screens, too many mice. Our agenda today is very simple. Our goal with this first presentation is to discuss framework. We're scheduled to go for about 30 minutes. It's a short, quick discussion because if we don't put some constraints on this, we could talk for hours. We could go into the history of data architecture, different definitions, the whole ball of wax. We do that though, and we're going to end up down a rabbit hole, and none of us are going to come out any wiser. So we're going to save those for future presentations. We're going to focus on one topic in depth in each time, and today we're going to keep this very brief, very focused, and get you out of here. Plus, honestly, this is our first attempt at doing a live stream, and as you can see, we already had an issue. Yay! I'm going to try and point a direction. I think that's the right direction. There's a chat window over there. Most of you have found the chat window. There's a subscribe button down there somewhere. Look at that. I think I'm playing. Those of you who know me know that I'm not used to being on camera. So we'll get through this. Today we're going to talk about framework, how to move forward. We'll do a summary. We'll leave time for QA. But if we don't get to your questions today, hey, we'll definitely follow up with you. You can always send questions to info@senturus.com. info@senturus.com. I just threw that in the chat window for everybody. And we'll talk at the end about some additional resources. As I just mentioned, some of you may know who I am. My name's Patrick Powers. I've been with Senturus, and I'm fabulous. Thank you, Scott. I've been with Senturus for coming up on 17 years. I've been doing data analytics, data warehousing, business intelligence for 25 years this year. And I've spent a long time looking at good architecture, good foundations, and good and bad projects. Okay? I'm one of our trainers. I'm an architect myself. I'm a data scientist. I'm qualified and certified in a lot of BI tools, programming languages, databases. I'm old and tired. Okay? Whether it's Cognos, Tableau, Power BI, SQL Server, Java, C++, I'm old and tired. Okay? But according to Scott Felton, I'm fabulous. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for listening to me. And again, not used to being on camera. I'm used to being hidden behind the camera. It's where I'm much, much happier. Let's get into this. So we're talking today about asking the right questions. Now, first off, we're going to talk a little bit about architecture and frameworks and things like that. So that means you get a lot of building analogies. Comes with the territory. We're talking about building blocks. We're talking about foundations. And the first step of that is asking the right questions to the right people. Regardless of your definition, regardless of what you think, we need to make sure that we're asking the right questions of the right people. And that's what we're going to focus on here today. Let's give you a wonderful analogy that everybody can identify with. Why is PowerPoint being stupid? I'm really trying here to get these PowerPoint slides to go right, and PowerPoint is just not cooperating. There we go. Here we have two visions of the future. That first image on the left, that should scare you. That should fill you with dread. We just see building after building stacked on top of each other. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the whole thing collapses. Sadly, this is how too many people's business intelligence looks like. This is how too many people's data infrastructure looks like. We've got modern applications cobbled together with 30-year-old legacy apps. We got bits and pieces built decades ago by people who aren't even with your company anymore. Any part of that puzzle, and the whole thing's going to collapse. And don't even try to go looking for documentation. I think we can all laugh at that. We can laugh at documentation. Now, Tom brings up a good point. Both images are a little scary. And we can discuss to death the aesthetics of the right-hand image. But let's focus on the positives here. Buildings with good foundations. Buildings that serve a purpose. Buildings that are part of the greater whole. Wide lanes. Look at how empty of traffic those lanes are. Now, come on, Tom. It would be kind of cool to live in that. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. This is where we want our framework of our architecture to begin. This is what we want of our organization, isn't it? So speaking of framework, that's today's topic. Today's topic is framework. And what I've got here in front of you now is the Zachman Framework. I want you to understand, now again, this is another one of those things we can debate. I like to call this the big picture of framework. It's an overwhelming view of the world, and by the way, this is where the 30 questions comes from. Because as you see, we've got 30 boxes here. And there are plenty of people who will say that the Zachman Framework's out of date, that it's not applicable to everything. But this has been around since 1987. And I want you to understand that, because I want you to understand that there's nothing new in the world. There's nothing new under the sun. For 35 years, we've been asking the same questions. And for 35 years, this same framework is a good place to start. And we're going to focus on the columns here today. We're going to look at the columns in depth, but let's understand the rows. Okay, let's understand the rows of this. First off, I'm considering this a starting point. You've got to begin somewhere. And a lot of you might be embarking on projects that are new. You might be embarking on projects that have already started. Square one. It's always a good place to start. So our framework can be described as a way to organize and analyze data. And most importantly, a summarization of perspectives. And that's what the rows are giving us. That's what's key to our needs. Because within any organization, data architecture and data frameworks, they take on a different perspective based on your role and based on your needs. And that can really drive the success of a project. The way a person in HR uses data is very different than the person in finance or the person in operations. You, I'm talking to you, as the overall architect, as the person who's probably going to be the one tasked to putting this together, you got to keep track of those different perspectives. And you've got to build a solution that works for everybody. That's where our columns come in. The why, the how, the what, the who, the where, the when. Without that, you're going to fail. And even at the very least, you might not catastrophically fail. But I think a lot of you have experienced the fact where, hey, we rush to get this into production. We rush to make it fit this particular group's needs. Now we've got to try and roll it out to the rest of the company. And all of a sudden, one size does not fit all, does it? So the sooner we recognize these perspectives and the sooner we see that bigger picture, the better chance we have of getting to a successful completion. And no row is more important than any other row. It's only when we take it as a whole do we get this full understanding and this full picture of things. I have to keep remember to looking at the camera. I keep forgetting that you're all there. Hi. I've got so many monitors around me. So let's talk about the rows real quick. Who are these rows? Contextual. This is our executive perspective. This is our external requirements, our drivers, our business functions. Conceptual, the business managers, those that have to live with the final decisions day to day. Logical, our architect, our high-level designers. Not quite the big picture, but not down to the granular level either. Look, I made everybody happy. I took the label off my water bottle. The physical, the engineer view. The person who has to make the decisions about technology, how to implement, how to manage the next level's actions, etc. And then lastly is the detailed level. And that is probably where most of you are. I would say that the majority of you here today, I see how many of you are here today, you're going to fit into one of these three roles, the logical, the physical, or the detailed. This is where you're going to fit, because this is your world. Many of you are probably here at physical and detail. You've got to listen to those above you, and they've got to listen to you too. But you can't get stuck in the weeds, especially at that detail level. You're the one who's got to figure out all these perspectives and put them together. Okay? So let's look at each one of the columns now. Let's talk about the columns. Why? Why are we doing this? What's our motivation? Is this a new business process? At each row, we have certain criteria. Our executives have the big list, the big overall why. They have the goals. Why are we motivated to do this project? Our managers need to know why this is important. What's the relationship between my day-to-day job and this goal? Please explain the motivation. The architecture needs to know the rules of the why. What are my rules so I can implement this correctly? We get deeper. We go into the specification of those rules. And then lastly, once again, you're the one who's having to figure out the details of that, aren't you? How do we put all this together to fit that why? And how do we fit it together with our existing architecture, our existing products, our existing projects? Why? Why do I need to make sure this works? Okay. Now I've got a 7-second delay on my end, so I'm going to pause for a second, see how everybody's doing, make sure everybody's doing okay so far, and checking that chat window over there. Oh, it's somewhere. So I'm going to just let you guys all say hello, type some stuff. While you're doing that, I'm going to slide on over. How? Such a simple question, isn't it? How? Thank you, Andrea. Somebody finally chatted in the chat window over there. How? Do you know what how creates? Meetings. You know who likes meetings? Nobody. But when we've got so many buzzwords, we've got so many new technologies, and we've got so many perspectives, and they all come back to the same thing. How are we going to pull this off? And everybody's going to come at it from a different angle. We're all going to try to figure out the process. but at different levels of detail, right? And this is where you're going to face a challenge, because you're going to have to figure out how to translate that 50,000 foot view of the executive down to the C level to get our processes and everything working. That's where the middle tiers become very important. Our conceptual, our logical, our physical, our manager, our architect. Because without them, we have no diagram, we have no process functions, we have no specifications. If we don't have good people in that middle section, if you don't have good people, things aren't going to run very smooth. We're going to run into trouble. So it's important to make sure that this area of the world has the right staffing, the right knowledge, and the right understanding of how. Okay, we know why, we know how. What? We decided how we're going to do it, but what is it? What are our building materials? I told you there would be building analogies. Okay. What's the model going to look like? What's the ERD look like? Is there any documentation? Have we tried this before? Where did we succeed? Where did we fail? What are the tools? And this is the point where we start thinking about tools. Okay? Now, we're not personally going to talk about tools today, but this is where you would start thinking about tools, and you would start doing your due diligence. Here's the pros of this tool. Here's the pros of this tool. Here's how it meets the how and the why. Here's where it doesn't meet the how and the why. So this what is where we start talking about tools. Now, we're not talking about a Cognos, a Tableau, a Power BI. We're upstream from that right now. But what we're talking about is figuring out those end users, what part of the picture they are, what they're going to be doing with the data every day, what's their tasks, and that's going to help us figure out the tools. Are they going to be doing inventory management? Are they doing HR management? When we take those first three, why, how, and what, we start to really figure out how to get the right tools in place, what data we're going to need, what data sources we're going to need. We're going to figure all that out with the what. Which, of course, brings us to who. Who? Well, I'm going to answer that. Phil. Phil's in charge. Phil will take all the blame. Now, if there are any of you connected today named Phil, I won't pick on you anymore. But deciding who, it's more than just deciding on which consultants to bring on board, which, of course, us, Senturus, we all know that, right? You wouldn't be here otherwise. But let's talk about the bigger picture of who. In many examples, in many times over these 25 years that I have taught these things, that I have worked with companies, one of the biggest problems, time and time again, I've seen this in organizations, is the lack of executive or senior management involvement. And I think a lot of you can agree and identify with that. Without a top-down senior leadership involvement, this project gets lower priority. There's no urgency felt. You end up getting derailed because there's something else that's going to be more important. All right? So the who, the very first who, is getting that senior management on board, getting them to understand the what, the why, the how, and getting their input. That way this project gets the relevancy and gets the importance it needs. Right? From there, we go down to that management level. And if we don't know what the left hand and the right hand are doing, we're going to end up with silos. I've got one client in particular. I've been working with this client for over 10 years as part of Senturus, and we have seen that they have 6 different installations of a tool, and none of those installations are aware of the other. And then there's 3 other groups who are using a completely different tool, because that manager thought it was good too. And then we find out that this group needs to have the same data as this group. Identifying all of the players as early as possible is going to get us on a road to success. Okay? We also need to start defining governance, stewardship, ownership, whatever term you want to apply. We've got to apply that to the sources. That's our managers. They need to know who owns this data source, how's it going to roll out, what happens when something goes wrong. They need to understand that. The lower stuff, this is where we need to make sure we have knowledge and skills. That is crucial, and that's where folks like Senturus come into play. We can help you with that detail level. We have that knowledge, that experience. Our next question, where? Now that's actually more of a modern question. Are we going to store this locally? Is it going to be remotely? Is it in the cloud? Is it at Phil's house? But it's more than just the physical where. It's the question of what repository do we store this models in? Where do the data diagrams go? Where does the output from this system go? Because, let's look at that one for a second. If during the what, the why, and the how, we figured that one of our goals is to produce an output file that goes to a third-party client, we need to know that where. Because that where is going to change things. Where's the FTP to receive this? Where's the XML for them to set this up? Where is it going? Where's the data? Is the data on Donna's desk in HR? Is the Donna in a database that nobody's updated for 20 years? So where is going to change depending on who you are on the rows. Everybody's going to have a different perspective of where. And that you should see that as the reoccurring theme here. Everybody's coming into this with a different perspective. And that's why you all need to be talking together and you all need to know what's going on. When? Well, I think we all know the executive's answer to that, right? Yesterday. And the project manager's perspective is 50 man hours. Just throw more bodies at it. We'll get it done. An old project manager joke from an old project manager. If it takes 9 months to have a baby, why can't we just put 8 more women on it and get it done in a month? Not how things work, right? So our when becomes important when we're trying to get all those perspectives in alignment. And you need good project management. Again, the middle tiers are key to success. Making sure we're staying in line with the where, with the when, the how. The when's going to fluctuate. It just is. As long as you have somebody mitigating the risk, managing the risk, understanding the risk. Okay? And that takes us to making sense of everything. I've gone through a lot in 24 minutes here. Okay? And I want to wrap it up. I know a lot of you are quite familiar with this image from your childhood. Just like back then, we learned a lesson early on. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. Our folks here at Senturus, we have the expertise, the experience, the know-how. We can be those middle tiers for you to help get your foundation right. So moving forward, and it's the plug you've all been waiting for. Contact Senturus when you're ready to start moving forward, whether it's with an existing project, whether you're just starting out. We can help you put together the ROI. We can put together the proof of concept. We can help you identify all those things. Look, if you've ever bought something from IKEA, you don't jump in without reading the instructions, and that's why they give you nice, pretty pictures. Let us help you. Because if you miss one of those columns or rows earlier, you run the risk of failing. Okay? You run the risk. So let us help you with that. Let us guide you through all these different columns and rows. Let us guide you through those 30 boxes. We'll help give your project the right priority. We can leverage our talent and make sure you stay on track. And we'll help you get your project to succeed. All right, look at that, 228. In summary, this is not an easy thing. This is a big undertaking. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to cost more, take longer, and need more people than you think. It is. But the more that you do up front, the more that you keep track of those perspectives, the more you can minimize those things. You get the right planning. Don't skip any of those steps. And contact Senturus. And with 1 minute to spare, thank you all for giving me 30 minutes of your life. I'll stick around here for a couple minutes more. If you want to know more, you can reach out to us at info@senturus.com. Please like, subscribe. If you like my face, I'll do this again next month or the month after. We'll see. We also go to Senturus.com, where you're going to find resources, documents, white papers, webinars, all sorts of good resources and things like that. We look forward to seeing you again. I hope you enjoyed everything. And with that, like I say, I'll stick around here for a minute or two. But with that, some info for you.